Hi, everyone. So I want to talk a little bit about Trajan's Forum, and I'm showing you artist's rendition of it here. So Trajan is going to be kind of the exemplar of high empire emperor. Under Trajan, we're going to see Rome take its largest form. He's going to be an extraordinary general, and his great claim to fame will be his conquest of Dacia. This is a very wealthy people who basically lived in modern day Romania. With the great wealth that he is going to acquire from the defeat of the Dacians, he's going to bring it back to Rome, and he is going to show off his prowess by creating this magnificent forum that will be placed next to Augustus's forum. Now we know about forum design as we looked at in the module on Pompeii. We know that a forum is like the kind of town city square, right? And typically you would see a long square, and at the end of it, one would find a Capitolium. Now, in this new forum of Trajan, he's changed things up a bit. And at the end, we no longer find a Capitolium. That is there. It has been moved kind of back beyond this now large rectangular building that is called a basilica. Okay, a large rectangular building known as a basilica. These were used mostly for civic offices, kind of bureaucratic offices, a seat for the running of government. And typical of a basilica, we see here that it was accessed through the side. Now, interestingly, we can see that behind the basilica, let me get my pointer, here it is, we see there are two buildings here with an open courtyard, okay? Both of these buildings were libraries. The building here on the left is a library devoted to texts written in Greek, and on the right, texts written in Latin. And then behind that was a temple. This will be a temple that will, after the death of Trajan, be devoted to Trajan, the deity or the god. Now, what's very interesting is in between these two libraries in this courtyard, we see this large column that extends up and above the roof line of the structures. And this is perhaps the most famous of the structures because it's all that exists today there at the Forum. And this is what it looks like today. So all of the buildings no longer exist, only this kind of extraordinary column. And as you can see, it's a column that is covered with relief carvings. In fact, the reliefs go all the way up to the top of this column, which is 128 feet tall. And we can understand why that is because there were those libraries on either side, right? A two-story library. So it would be possible to view the column from the ground floor and then also from the upper part of the library, making so it makes sense that they would kind of include information on the upper levels. You don't get a sense of that when you see it now as it just stands alone in an open square in Rome today. This column is known as the Column of Trajan, created around 112. Of course, that new forum glorified Trajan's victories, and particularly two of the wars against the Dacians, and was paid for by the spoils of those campaigns. Now, probably not surprised to learn that the information on this column also glorifies Trajan as well as highlights his military campaigns against the Dacians. The column stands 128 feet high, and friezes wind their way up. There's 23 spirals, and over 2,500 figures are depicted. Now, it was built by stacking 17 drums on top of one another. And interestingly, that column is hollow. And if you look here, you can see there's a little door down here, and there is a spiral staircase inside. And at one point, it was possible to walk up inside the column of Trajan and kind of look out at the view beyond. In Trajan's time, at the top, there was a sculpture of Trajan. However, now that has been replaced by a sculpture of a pope. Also in ancient times, this was a funerary monument, and the ashes of Trajan were placed at the base of the column. It's an interesting work because it's really the first of its kind, quite unique, and will actually be influential for later such columns. Now, if we look closely, we can see at the very bottom, this is Trajan and his troops leaving Rome. And we can see here the only divine figure represented. This is that god of Portunus, the river god, who is watching as the troops exit the gates of Rome and move on towards their ultimate destination of Dacia. It's a kind of wealth of information about Roman military practices. There's over 150 episodes told, many of which, as you can see here, are not actual battle scenes, but actually give us an idea of what these Roman armies, kind of did on a day-to-day basis. The military clothing that they wore, the way they went about building bridges, crossing rivers, taking boat rides to various parts of the empire, giving us a whole range of different information about the military practices of the Romans from this period.